What is going on, wrestling fans? Welcome to the Tapped In Indy Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Heath Mulligan, joined by Mr. Nick McDaniel. Nick, how are you doing this fine day?
Doing good, man. It's the beginning of the week here. As you know, we record on Tuesdays, obviously. Trying to recover from catching up for everything from the work week on Mondays, and a pretty eventful weekend, to say the least.
I've had multiple late nights in a row going to events. One of those events we went to was the Georgia Wrestling History Awards Banquet, Gala, Party, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to share some thoughts about that event. We had a really good time. But if you really want to get the scoop behind the scenes, you got to go to patreon.com/tappedoutpod. You can join for free. And one of the reasons you need to join for free is where every week you're going to find the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight Show. But like I said, we're going to be sharing some thoughts on the banquet, the gala, there on Patreon. But again, whatever level you join at, lots of great content, lots of behind the scenes stuff. We had a good time.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, they had the last minute venue change. I thought the venue looked very nice, very professional. And I would say my number one takeaway was the energy in the building. It was just a different kind of energy. And it was a fun night.
Yeah, I'm glad we went. I mean, look, we were afraid we weren't going to make it. I had some stuff that was going to have me tied up and I wasn't going to make it. Last minute, it kind of freed up. So I was like, okay, cool. So we all jumped in the car, rode down. And like I said, man, I made it a point to go to to the powers that be there and in the building and say, hey, great job. You pivoted very well. You should be proud of that. That was I think they did. Like you said, it was very much a chicken salad moment, as we like to say in wrestling.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think, look, as far as the event itself, they did a pretty good look. Somebody was asking me like, hey, there were hiccups. Well, listen, I don't know that we've been to much. I don't know that we've been to many wrestling events where there weren't a little hiccup here and there.
Yeah.
It's just it's part of the live events, period, for that matter. I've been to professional concerts like in an arena where sound would mess up for a second or something like that. I mean, so that part's going to happen. I just think like how you handle those and kind of move on. I think overall it did pretty well. So kudos, and it was a fun experience, and I'm glad we went.
We got to present one of the awards, and it was fun. It was a fun night. I enjoyed the food. They had meatballs and chicken wings. The chicken wings exceeded my expectations. They were kind of spicy too. We wanted to compare our picks with the actual winners. That's what you come here for. If you haven't heard yet, we're going to tell you who the winners are. Spoiler alert.
Hold on. We're going to hit pause for something.
Yeah.
If you didn't listen to last week's episode where we made our picks and you want to hear, because here's the thing, I think there's some context there to like,
yes,
it's not just like, hey, I picked this person. No, it's also the why we picked those people. And you look, and it's so subjective. It's so there's a million reasons that you could pick any of these guys and ladies that were on this list. So that's why I say hit pause, go back and listen to last week's episode. The award goes to boat, then jump back to this one, and you could hit it. So,
yes. So, and at the end, after we kind of announce all the winners, I'll kind of share my thoughts on why we were incorrect on so many of them. Feud of the year, the winner was Hakeem Young versus Michael the Flying Fro Walker from Coastal Empire Wrestling. You and I had both picked
Matt Griffin versus Georgia, right?
That's right. Yeah, we had both picked Matt Griffin versus Georgia. Again, go back and listen to that. We presented the award for promo of the year, which went to Simon Sermon. Also from Coastal Empire Wrestling, you're going to see a trend here. You and I had both picked Joe Black for his promo at Southern Honor Wrestling.
Is that
Go
the
ahead.
first one? Every now and then I think I might throw a note in here, and I'm going to be like, so here's the why, right? Like part of it is, it's you're going to like the styles, personal preferences, and you'll see that in our picks as part of the thing that I think that matters a lot when we discuss these things because it is so subjective. We had off air before we recorded about who's the best wrestler in the world, and there was this crazy conversation about Will Ospreay not even being the best wrestler in AEW, much less in the world, because of his ability to draw money, etc., whatever. But some
Right.
people just like what happens inside the ring. So those things matter, and that kind of is in context here. But listen, promo. We joked about part of the issue with promo, right? Is I was in the room for Joe Black. That's why it kind of hit home. So experiencing it live. So shockingly, that one hit home a little more than the ones that I had to watch on video, right?
Right. Right. Um. So, I think when you're there, it makes a big difference. Which is why I was glad we were there at the awards dinner because, like I said, the energy was good, and some of the best promos of the year were good that night. Referee of the year, a lot of love and flowers given to Grandpa, who was the winner, and that's who you had picked. And I had actually picked Lewis, who does Turnbuckle, and again, go back to last week, and you can listen to all of that. The event of the year winner was AWE Show of the Year, and you and I had both picked Rumblejack. However, when this winner was announced, I mean, the crowd went crazy.
Yeah, and it's everybody's going to be, for whatever reason, and I knew, and I said something to. There was somebody I was talking to when I was telling them like, hey, this is kind of I think what we're going to do this week on the show, and they're like, oh, well, people they always push back and have an argument, and I'm like, why? So I preferred the Rumblejack format, the crowd. I was, by the way, this is not one of the scenarios because I was at both shows.
Yes, me too.
So you can't even argue the fact that like, well, you weren't there. No, I was there. So I think I'm a pretty good judge of what I like. I mean, did you like what I did there? I'm a pretty good judge at what I like.
Yes.
And so, but hey, look, if the wrestlers and promote whomever voted, vote that as the show of the year, I'm like, okay. Like that's the difference. I think we're in a world now where you feel like not only do you have to disagree, but you have to fight the differing opinion. And I'm like, okay, I preferred Rumblejack. So all right. I didn't say that I didn't like AWE Show of the Year. I just said,
Right.
like, hey, that was just my pick. And then, somebody was like, well, it should have been by whose measurement?
Right.
Yeah. I'm like, kudos to AWE for having the show they did. I mean, we were there. We saw the main event. It's awesome. I still said Rumblejack. I mean, it is what it is. It doesn't change anything.
Yes. I think one of the discussions we had on the way home is, and we've said this in multiple arenas.
Hold on. Let's hit pause. I think that's going to fall on our other thing.
Yeah.
So, because I don't want to give too much of that away. There's a Patreon coming, and we'll probably touch on that in a little while.
Yes. So, moving right along.
Yeah. Teaser number one.
Teaser number one. Commentators, Brandon Benefield and Gerard Bonner. That's who we both picked.
Can I ask you a question? We discussed this last week. Look, I said it about Grandpa. Like, there's a couple, this is kind of the thing. There's a couple of awards that we almost kind of feel like at this point, like it is this person's award until they choose not to do this anymore.
Right.
Or somebody's got, because here's the problem. Grandpa falls in this. Brandon Gerard fall into this. We'll spoiler
Diana
alert.
Michelle.
Diana Michelle, ringing out. Yeah, we'll get there, right? Those three, it's almost a thing of it's one thing when somebody gets hot and then a couple years later somebody else comes on and knocks them off. The problem is now those three categories, those three awards, that team, Diana and Grandpa, have so much momentum and so much like the reputation, the legacy, whatever you want to call it. has built to a point that it's not going to be like, oh, you're just going to have a better year than them. I think you're going to have to be way better to them if they're still doing it. Like I think the only thing that's going to stop them from winning possibly could be themselves. Like if Grandpa does eventually say, "Hey, I'm only going to work," I'm making stuff up, folks. If he says, "Look, I'm only going to work action wrestling now. I'm semi-retired, and I'm just going to work their shows, and that's it." Okay, somebody can slip. You see what I mean? Diana Michelle says, "I'm going to stop working 50 shows or whatever a year, whatever she works. I don't even know." And she goes, "Oh, I'm only going to work Southern Honor, and I'm going to work 12 a year. That's it."
Right.
She's not, but I'm saying if she did, that would be the thing that could stop her. I'm going to ask you that question. Am I accurate in my assumption that these 3 categories are almost locked because of the legacies that have been built at this point?
I think you're correct. Do you think with Brandon and Gerard, if I'm not mistaken, the only promotion they're a team together on is Southern Honor, who this is this is the only award they're in there. But do you think part of the reason these guys keep winning, they're good, they deserve to win, but how Southern Honor presents them as a commentary team, that they do the camera and
they do the pre-show, they do the show, they do the podcast, like they do. So it's
it's like a total package.
That is absolutely correct.
And I think it's always a team effort. But yeah, those guys are awesome. Tag team of the year, the winners, the Buff and Fluff connection of Sean Legacy and Cody Fluffman. This was the first winners that were not on our radar. These guys are good. We love them, but you and I both picked the hierarchy.
Yeah, I mean, listen. Okay, so I don't. The reason I was trying to do it this way is because I'm not trying to like argue against winners. Like,
yeah,
cool. Like, I get it. Like, Sean Legacy is a WWE ID guy. Cody Fluffman is super entertaining. He was one of our favorite wrestlers of 2024. He's one of the most enjoyable talents I always tell him, but Cody Fluffman was you had to experience Cody Fluffman.
Right.
Because that kind of adds to it, his ability to work a crowd and all that kind of stuff. There's a reason why he's going where he's going, right? It's because he can work a crowd.
Right.
But my comment was, so they're absolutely deserving. Our only case was like, the hierarchy was champions, it felt like, everywhere. So I just felt like it was their year. So I felt like I didn't think it was that complicated. I didn't think it was that difficult, but.
Right. And I didn't feel like Buff, again, we were trying to count the number of matches they had. And for me, it was quantity, not quality, that I just didn't feel like, they're the Viral Pro Tag Team Champions. I just didn't feel like they'd had enough matches in Georgia. But again, love those guys. Interesting to see what the future holds for them for a variety of reasons.
Yep.
Most improved wrestler, the winner was Hakeem Young, and that's who we had both picked. And this young man had quite the night, took home a lot of hardware, and was reminded, hey, you've come a long way. And I think the crowd, in their way, kind of reminding them, hey, some people get second chances.
Hey, listen, I had an opportunity to speak to the young man, give him the pat on the back and say, hey, look, I think it does well. This award, because, most improved could have been there's so much interpretation. It's like comeback player of the year in the NFL. There's a great debate of what that even means, right? But my stance was, hey, where he stood at the beginning of last year to where he was today, I don't know that anybody's career had the elevation and the improvement. And it might be, look, it wasn't like just in ring. It was status of outside the ring, reputation, call it whatever. I thought the crowd had some fun with it.
Yes.
At a moment. So So it made me chuckle a little bit. But and I do appreciate the fact that he could stand back a little bit. Like we discussed this
Yeah.
last week. Like he recognized those that kind of helped him get there.
Yes.
Because in this business, it's a lot of people like to say, well, this is all me. I did all this. That is rarely the case.
Yes.
It's usually timing, it's opportunities, and it's a lot of people who kind of can help you get there. But this young man, super proud of where he came, and literally in 12 months' time, and to be able to stand up there and like recognize. I was, basically, and it's metaphorical, but I was basically left for dead last year, in Georgia wrestling, and now here I am as he held up his championship. Kudos, great move by the way, bringing that title.
Oh yeah. Also, kudos to him for getting dressed up and wearing the championship belt.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
I loved it. I loved it, and very happy for him. Ring announcer of the year, we mentioned it before, was Diana Michelle, and that's who we both had picked for that role. Mentor of the year was Murder One, who also got a Legends Award from, and that was really from the previous year, I think. We both had picked Terry Lawler, but Murder One certainly deserving of this award.
Yeah. The irony is, here's the thing with the Mentor Award. The irony is like I said, this is one of those awards that like you could have given it to any of them.
Yes,
and I'd have been, because they all do their parts. They all do different things. They all do, they help the the kids as they're coming up. So yeah, that one's a hard one. And I always tell everybody, I generally won't ever fight and argue with that one because here's the thing: somebody voted for them.
yes,
They're clearly helping somebody. That was kind of what I said. And if they got the most votes, then that means, if nothing else, the people you mentored voted for you. You got the most people to actually vote for you.
Do you think you have been around Georgia wrestling a lot longer than me? My knowledge of the history of it is not as good as I want it to be. But it feels like Murder One, like it felt like this year was a turnaround for him. It felt like he wrestled more places. But it felt like maybe a year or two ago he was maybe disengaged from things, but now he's fully all in.
Yeah, I would say that, and I think part of that. And I'm going to preface like I literally I can respect, because I know he has a lineage of. So when I was a high school kid and got into kind of Georgia wrestling a little bit, I had the connection with Terry Lawler, who was obviously his brother was Steve the Brawler Lawler. So, ironically enough, Steve worked with my brother for a short cup of coffee. I mean, at a cabinet shop, weirdest thing ever, but said that it would fall, small world kind of thing. But then, that whole tree was Steve and Murder had ties together, and Terry came in later, and, then it was like the Jimmy Rave and then you had the hierarchy. It's kind of it's a blend of all of that. But I would say this, and again, so I'm saying I don't know Murder like a lot of people do. I'm not claiming to. But from the outside looking in, it also looked like, when you were talking about how he was disengaged, I think it might have been just disengaged with other promoters, maybe to some degree. But it was cool to see him the last couple years working with Gary and him at Southern Honor, clearly picking up the Premier, universe, doing the IWE thing, doing, spreading it around. I'm like, okay, cool. So, as much as everything you probably have ever heard about Murder, most of it is probably true, as far as being, he's the real deal. He's going to tell you how he feels, all of those things.
Right.
I'm not asking, and I don't know, and I'd love to ask him, is it just him at some point going like, hey, I'm not saying playing nice with others, but just like, hey, look, it's wrestling. Let's just do business. Like, and is that where we're at? And that's why because here's the thing. It's easy. My opinion, take this for what it is. I think it is a good play, to get the mentor. I feel like you kind of do have to be at a pretty decent amount of places, because then
Yes.
you're being able to mentor a lot of a different crowd, and helping more people, and that helps when winning that award. But kudos to him for picking that up.
Yes. As I mentioned earlier, he also picked up the Legends Award. That was Simon Sermon and Murder One. And I thought Rick Michaels in his presentation to Simon Sermon certainly one of the better speeches of the night. Probably the most
Uh,
heartfelt.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna call it second. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. I'm gonna call it
I
second. But it's the thing. Like it was that was the cool thing. Like that speech kind of like shows there's certain things that matter. Like look, Murder One, Simon Sermon, Nick Patrick last year had a there was like a three-way. It was a weird thing with how that award. So Georgia Wrestling History has basically said going forward, the committee's just going to pick the legend. But
yeah,
this year they were going to do all three. Nick Patrick couldn't make it, so they're like, hey, Murder One and Simon Sermon will get theirs this year. Nick Patrick will get his next year, and they'll kind of be, I don't want to say caught up. They'll be kind of help resolve that or whatever. And what's cool? I actually liked having the two.
mm-hmm.
I thought I would actually, when they were announcing they were giving two, I thought it would be, But watching that moment up there on the stage, because you could sit there and go, there's a connection with both of those guys. Yeah, okay, I was cool with it. So I'm not saying like maybe it can be multiple people in a year.
Yeah.
Something like that. That'd be kind of like a Hall of Fame, a sense of a word where they get in. That type of thing. So maybe that's the future of the Legends Award. I don't know. I don't know any of that. I just thought it was pretty cool to have two.
Yeah. Match of the year was the last man standing match from Coastal Empire Wrestling, Michael the Flying Fro Walker versus Hakeem Young. That was my pick. Your pick was QT Marshall versus Kyle Matthews from the Southern Honor versus Turnbuckle show.
Yeah, I mean, look, this goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago. Just taste, styles, whatever. I even, full disclosure throughout, I knew because of some stuff I knew behind the scenes that what made me like that match so much. So I thought it was really good. I mean, but this was, when done correctly, and the categories are filled with good finalists and a solid top to bottom. I'm not arguing. That's the other thing. It goes back to what I said earlier in the podcast. I'm not sitting here arguing. I wasn't arguing against Hakeem Young and Michael Walker. I just made my preference of choice of saying, hey, if I'd have voted, and maybe there's a 2-3-2-1 or 1-2-3 voting system in the future, which we'll discuss, maybe a teaser number 2.
Yeah.
But they'd have been in there. I mean, yeah. So kudos. By the way, kudos to the kids. Because they weren't done, right? They weren't done yet. It was kind of a thing. They were on a roll there.
Yes, yes. Manager of the year was Donald Jakes, and that is who we both thought
I don't
should
think
win it.
Did I thought I might. I thought I picked Matt Griffin. The more I think about it, that he managed Action Wrestling across.
Oh yeah, no, you know what? You're right. That is who you picked.
Yeah. I was sitting here thinking about it. We were like, you were telling me that. I'm like, was it? I was like, I think I picked Matt Griffin. And again, nothing against Jake's, but I just was a fan of the style and the approach. Jake's probably would have been my 2, or whatever. But
here would be teaser number 3. Some of these you hear us saying that we can't make an argument against. Some of them we probably could. And we may make those on Patreon. There you go. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah.
Technical wrestler, the Kyle Matthews Technical Wrestler of the Year award, Najicism for the second year in a row. You and I had both selected Adam Priest for that award.
No knock, but I think Adam Priest, hands down, is probably one of the best technical. Look, I just found it ironic too that Kyle Matthews was in this category and he didn't win an award named after himself. But, but look, with no disrespect to anybody in the category, I just felt I had seen Adam Priest work Action, Turnbuckle, all over the country for that matter. I don't know. He was at Collision Saturday or something, So kind of my point, but as far as technical wrestling, I just felt like that he was the one this year for my pick.
Yes. Booker of the Year, The winners were Zach Mosley and Bryce Cannon. That's who I selected. You selected or had picked multiple time winner Dylan Frymeyer for this award.
Yeah, chicken salad. Look, again, Zach and Bryce know them pretty well. Talk to them as much as I can. Not taking anything. Look, one of the arguments could be made. The reason, hey, why did they deserve it? Because they literally they injected new life into Coastal Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And that was storytelling. I mean, I don't know. You had the feud of the year. You had the match of the, so it makes some sense there. I can see the playing out of how the voting went makes total sense. But yeah, I just was like, on the fly, one of the biggest stories, of the year getting, finagled in the middle of your execution. That I just went with Dylan for, that was just my take.
And at some point we'll touch on that because I think we've danced around that, talking about what Dylan did and the chicken salad and all that. And I think eventually on Patreon we'll touch on that. Promotion of the year, Coastal Empire Wrestling. You and I had both picked Action Wrestling for this award.
Yeah, I mean, I look again. It's saying, look, it's funny. I've had a conversation, and we're about to go into a run of me being able to say, because we're trying to keep like this part's as positive as possible.
Yes,
two things can be true. Nick's one of his big things that he talks about a lot. I just talked about myself in the third person, which I didn't. I try not to do. But I do sometimes, say, like I say it to my kids, two things can be true. This and this, they don't have to disagree with each other. I can be super proud. I can, hey, Coastal, like I'm not going to sit there and say they didn't. Here's the thing. I've never said you didn't deserve it. I'm just saying my pick was Action for a million and one reasons. But I can say I was happy for those guys to be able to stand up there and have their moment. So, and I think Matt might be one of the ending comments that we can say is like the youth movement and the different people and like what it means and all that kind of stuff. So maybe down the road, we'll have that conversation.
Correct. Promoter of the year, you and I had both picked Matt Griffin, and the winner was Sam Skaggs from Kraken Pro Wrestling. Again, one of those things. Two things can be true. Very happy for this young man. And he had, I think you were going to say he had the speech of the night. Or who did you think had the speech of the night?
1,000%. Sam Skaggs, Hold My Beer Hansen, call him what you want to will. He cut, and it wasn't a promo. It was, you could tell it was 100% from the heart.
It was still real to him.
Absolutely. I mean, and, he put, literally wore himself out doing that, accepting that award. And look, just because I picked Matt Griffin, I told, it's funny. Nobody, his wife and his kid are probably his biggest fans. Probably, his dad will probably rank up there as well. But I always joke with him all the time. I don't know that there's too many bigger fans of, Sam Skaggs than my wife. Took pictures, texted her, told her she was so happy. And I said that. I was like, look, I was so happy for that kid. Was there a chance that I was happy that I was wrong? I thought Matt Griffin was probably, the promoter of the year. But I wasn't mad when I was wrong. Because, I was super happy for that kid.
Absolutely. Rookie of the year, J. Alpha Miller, who also cut a tremendous promo in his acceptance speech. You and I had both picked Christian Taylor for this award.
Hey, look, there's guilty as charged. Could be familiarity. It could be, all of those things. Knowing it was funny. I had somebody, it was a conversation had, and I won't tell, somebody was like, well, hey, I know I heard you say like he had 74 reasons that you thought he was rookie of the year, all the matches he had. And they were like, well, and they told me a number bigger than that. And you know what I said? Tree fell in the woods and nobody heard it. Did you send that to me to tell me that?
Right.
He did. And he was like, well played. You know what I mean? Like, well played.
Right.
And I was like, look, so I'm openly telling everybody, this is why we ask promoters wrestlers, bookers, whomever, to help send this stuff in and help. It's super hard. We joked about this, and this is not to be a tangent off of this young man because I'm coming back to why it matters to him. We cover 33 promotions right now, like pretty regularly. And it's tough to try to keep up with all. Yeah, I know, right? It makes you laugh and makes you want to bang your head on the wall sometimes. But so I knew who he, like I said, it's not like I didn't know who he was, but I was not as familiar with J. Alpha Miller as I should have been. Like how I'm doing this, folks, I'm actually taking that upon myself. That's my fault.
That's correct.
I'm going to take 95% of the blame. 5% of the blame, I'm going to go, you're going to love this part. It is on a lot of people out there that no one was sending stuff about this young man to us. Yeah. That's on them. There's 5% of the blame, folks, I'm throwing on everybody else. I'm going to take 95, but 5% is on every promotion he works for, every promotion, people that he's wrestled, or the people who say, like they believe in this young man. Everything, we weren't getting it. That's the thing we're asking for the help on. If there's somebody out there that we should be watching and you don't hear their name enough on here, just send it and tell us why. Send us a match. Send us a promo. Send us a video. Send me an audio message on why we should be watching this kid. T.O. Nick McDaniel on social media. T.I. Heath Mulligan on Facebook. Either one. Dude, that's all I'm asking, because I'm accepting it all. Because when I sat there like you and I watched, J. Alpha Miller cut that promo, essentially, I looked around, I'm like, you guys weren't telling me about this guy? Like, it's my fault I missed it. I get it. But nobody was telling me about him? I'm in.
Yes.
The Carly Bravo, J. Alpha Miller tease, I was like, sign me up. Somebody tell me where this match is. Let me know when it happens, because I got to be there. J. Alpha, let me tell you this. I tell you that this is how, if you don't believe me, I don't even know if he's seen it yet. As he cut the promo and he was walking back to his chair, I went on Facebook, literally found his account and sent a friend request.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have to be following this young man.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, that is your Rookie of the Year. That's how you get attention. That's how you get my attention. That's
right. We will certainly be watching him a lot more closely than we did last year.
Okay.
Male Performer of the Year, the person you and I both picked, won this award, and that is Alexander Lev, who also cut a very good, heartfelt promo. And and we talked about this Sunday night. You had the two guys who were the two finalists, or the 1 and 2 for Rookie of the Year last year. In year 2, one of them wins Most Improved, and one of them wins Male Performer of the Year. That's pretty good stuff right there. These young guys.
That is to Lev's credit. And by the way, if you listen to Georgia Wrestling Spotlight this week on patreon.com/tappedoutpod, you're going to hear a lot about Alexander Lev.
Yes.
Because to go from Rookie of the Year to Male Performer of the Year, and the stuff we're going to talk about on that episode, I can't say enough. We can say, like, hey, we're proud of the kid or whatever, but when I hear the people that have emotionally invested, everybody, about how proud they are of him, like, this is what I'm talking. By the way, this is literally what I was just talking about with J. Alpha Miller. The people that have put time, energy, and created, like, the brain power of it to helping Lev, they're the ones that are sitting there telling you, like, they're the one telling us. It's not Lev like telling us, like, he's great. Like, hey, you got to be watching him. Hey, did you notice this? Hey, have you seen it? And, like, so you're like, oh, yeah, I see it. And then next thing you know, like, yeah, totally can see it all. Proud of him to jump from literally Rookie of the Year to Male Performer of the Year. I would love to know, and I'm sure there's, a way to do, like, is there hey, Larry, I want a spreadsheet with the winners by year across on a spreadsheet and have all of them put in for all the years, so you could track and see who went from like what award to what award or whatever in a spreadsheet. That's a lot of time and energy. That's a
I
Heath
think
Mulligan
I
project.
I think I have that. I think I have that somewhere, maybe.
Okay.
Um,
So
female performer of the go ahead.
Alexander left. Sorry, we tangented so many times. Kudos to him
Yeah,
for male performer of the year. So
yes. Female performer of the year, Rose Gold for the second year in a row. You and I both picked Angelica Risk. The young lady who presented this award um, said, we have all these awards. There's only one award specifically for women. And I said to you, a female could win. This is specifically that award is specifically for females, but a female match could be. Didn't a female match get nominated for match of the year last year? That Lindsay
uh,
Snow like no holds barred match or
with
something?
wasn't it Danny or was it her and no, it wasn't her.
It was Lindsay Snow and somebody, and they had like a no
Yeah, I
holds
think so.
barred
I think it
match.
was up in the mix. There, teaser 4. This is there's a whole thing about this is why that I will add on that Patreon, patreon.com/tapped out pod, available for our paying members there. About we'll tease the in depth on what that's going to be. We've teased it enough at this point, but what it'll be, I think, in depth is going to matter.
Yes. And then finally, the overall wrestler of the year. Um, you had picked Carly Bravo. I had picked Hollywood Hunter James. The winner, Nagicism. Um, and so winning technician of the year and overall wrestler of the year. I can't. I was trying to think if someone had done that before.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a spreadsheet note. We gotta. That would be handy to have to see if that's ever happened before. But yeah, yeah. Listen. Here's the thing, because I always tell everybody, just because it's not who I would have picked. Again, how many times have we come and say, "Hey, we're not." I just Carly Bravo's the guy. He'll, like, look, and I said it last week. Hey, if he counts, he's wrestler of the year. I don't think it's even close. So maybe the vote was a lot of people are like, hey, Carly doesn't count. He's a signed talent. He doesn't count. So then it took one person out of the mix. Maybe that was the thought process. I don't know. That's a whole other conversation. But congrats to Naja, man. He, like I said, two technical wrestler of the year, overall wrestler of the year. Look, yeah.
Did it and won this really in front of the hometown crowd
Oh yeah.
in the PCW building. Uh, so that was a cool moment to see. I think one of the reasons, and we're trying to figure out what do we say here and what do we say on the Patreon, but I think one of the reasons you and I that we're off some is we really are outsiders, and so we're voting from this outside perspective. I think we'll talk about more, but I think these awards are kind of like the coaches poll. I think you and I are kind of taking a broader view of Georgia wrestling. Like you said, we cover 33 promotions. But if you're in the wrestling business, you're not watching 33 promotions. Um, and so you're I think there's some familiarity that influences. I think there's a lot of things that influence the vote, but I feel like we have a different perspective than the people that are actually voting.
Yeah, we joked about how coaches, it's come out that some coaches in the, in college football were like, oh, my grad assistant does that or whatever.
Mhm.
They do the voting because they watch more than I do. When you're a coach, you're watching, like, and again, like wrestlers, the places you work, unless, here's the unless you're going home, by the way, which you kind of probably should be, going home and watching the other promotions, whether it's on their YouTube or whether it's on, IWTV, pick a service, whatever, Triller TV, if you're more of a national talent or whatever. And I say all that, the reason you should be watching is because you might see something that influences you. You might see something that goes, oh yeah, don't ever do that because I was thinking about doing that and that doesn't work. Or Heaven forbid you see something and you go back to the promotions you're working and go, hey, I saw something to do production wise. Have you ever thought about doing this?
Mm-hmm.
It is, believe it or not, it is not outside their bounds of you to go in there and say like, hey, I really saw something they're doing over there. Let's if it'll make the promotion better. Have y'all ever thought about this? Because worst thing they're gonna do is go, yeah, we tried it, a couple years ago. It just really didn't work because X was. Oh, okay, cool. I mean, heaven forbid you try to make the promotion that you're working at better. But the big thing is we always hear like you should watch matches of, and by the way, again, this is true. Talk about multiple things being true. You should watch, if you're a tag team, you should watch Midnights versus Rock and Roll. You should watch, by the way, you should watch Road Warriors versus Horsemen. You should watch, pick it or whatever. If you're a singles guy, if you're a babyface, go watch Steamboat or go watch this, whatever. You can get better, but it doesn't hurt, by the way, to go look at, especially knowing the region you're in, because there's nothing worse than when I see two gimmicks that are basically identical.
Mm-hmm.
And then I talk to one of them. They're like, "Oh, I didn't know he was over there. I didn't know this." I'm like, "He works literally the promotion that's 25 minutes from here. How did you not know?" Stuff like that. So I do think it does matter about getting in, familiar with whatever. But how does that all tie to the awards? If I ask wrestlers about other wrestlers and he's a champion over here, and I'm like, "Oh, I've never heard of him," it's telling. It's telling with how much you know what's going on around you, and you're not just inside your bubble and kind of thing. So, yeah, I've had those conversations.
I think it also helps if you're booking matches, you can see, oh, this match has already happened 4 different places. Maybe we're not going to do it right now. We'll do it a little later or something like that. One thing that was really cool to see in the building, and we talk about whether the awards matter or not, and it was clear from being in the building that these awards mean something to people. We saw people, I think of Skaggs winning Promoter of the Year. I mean, that was a real moment. That was real emotion. I mean, I hate to break kayfabe. This guy's emotional. This guy's crying.
Yeah.
He's so overcome with emotion and just so shocked and humbled and proud. And then I also saw guys that didn't win that were disappointed.
Yeah.
And you got to take that. And I also saw people that didn't win, and it was like, yeah, okay, whatever. You know what I mean? And it was like, hey, tomorrow morning I got to get up and do all this over again. And so, you either get bitter or you get better. And so I'm curious to see what happens. Speaking of getting bitter, it seems like this time of year, seems like about April, May, everybody starts making peace. But in January, it's wartime in Georgia wrestling, it feels like.
We go through cycles, right? Wherever,
Yeah.
we talked about this, was it a year ago?
Mm-hmm.
Where you made the comment of everybody's playing nice, everybody's getting along, all the promotions are working together, da 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 da. And it's one of those like, there's a scene in Red Dawn, the original, not the remake,
Mm-hmm.
in the original where they're sitting around a campfire, and they've got the guy, the pilot, he's crash landed, he's with them, and one of the people, one of the kids in the group says, like basically trying to figure out like what started it, like what happened, why did World War III break out? He goes, I don't know. I guess they just forgot what it was like.
Yeah.
Toughest kid on the block. And I'm like, I always feel like that's what happens in Georgia wrestling. Everybody starts getting along, everybody whatever, and then something a little bit comes along, and I'm like, that truce is like, it takes a little vibration, and then all of a sudden the plates shift. You know what I mean? It's like, then the cracks come, and then everybody starts, it's coming back. So I'm like, are we in the cycle where we're about to roll back? And listen, here's the thing though. I know a lot of people like it, and it makes for great headlines and clickbait and buzz and, hot take posts and blah, blah, blah. I don't know that I particularly do in the grand scheme of things, because I've typically learned over time that a lot of times there's ill-informed posts get made, like things that people don't know everything.
Right, right,
And it's kind of
right.
like, hey, it's kind of one of the things that, like, look, I try to go out of our way to say, like, hey, if something breaks, I'll call somebody. Hey, is this true? And I can only take people at their, I can only take them at face value and take, look, if they tell me, until I find out that you're lying to me, then whatever. But just not knowing the details and hearing, that people start getting cranky with each other and fussing and fighting. And I always comes back to, like, I get it. Here's where I always draw the line. I'll say things like, it's just wrestling, man. What do you really, like, you're going to lose sleep over this? Now, here's the part that I agree with a lot of times. If people start taking money out of your pocket underhandedly, I got you. For being mad at somebody, I get that part. You can get mad about that. But when it's just like, hey, we run 3 hours apart and we're fighting because we're trying to be the best promotion, and I'm like, what is that? And literally a lot of times I'll look at somebody and go, I don't even know what that means. Because how many times have I said today, it's all subjectivity. It's all, that kind of stuff. So, I don't know. But I know you like it. You like it when it starts.
I had a buddy one time. He got mad at me because he was like, "Man, you stole my girlfriend." And I'm like, "Bro, she came to me. I didn't. I'm just an innocent bystander. Your girlfriend came to me, and I didn't. I'm saying, like, you don't know the whole story. You trying to say I wasn't doing anything, and to me, Michael Jordan was famous for having to invent stuff to motivate himself. And, he got cut from his high school basketball team in the 10th grade, and that fueled him to become who I feel is the greatest basketball player of all time. And if a promoter or a wrestler has to invent something in their head to motivate them, I get that. But I don't know that there's anything to really be fighting about. I mean, to me, the thing is, you don't want to book somebody, don't book them. You don't want to book somebody that works at promotion A, you just don't book them. Like, you don't have to. I think the biggest mistake many in wrestling make is they just tell everybody what they're thinking too much. Just do what you got to do. Nobody needs to know what you're thinking. Nobody. I think. Oh my gosh. I think my biggest pet peeve in independent wrestling is, and I've said this before, you're trying to put out to the general public that you are this tough, hardened performer, businessman, businesswoman, whatever, that you're just not to be messed with. And then I read some of this social media and I'm like, you just sound weak. Like, that makes me not want to buy a ticket to your show.
Yeah.
And so,
by the way, that goes for, like, because here's the thing: people are like, "Are you saying?" Like, I get it, and this is the funny part. This is, because I've had this whole take, and I've gone, but it's why you should have two social medias.
yes,
Your wrestler name and your personal name, or your business name, whatever. And it's funny because people always like, "Hey, I hardly ever even post on my," because I have a podcast like T.O. Nick McDaniel. Just so for the record, I don't understand why people don't understand this. That is not my, like, real account. Like, this is the podcast.
Yeah.
Like Nick McDaniel, like, page. I have my own personal one that does my real job and all that kind of stuff. I have another account, but on here, it's like, it's just podcast stuff.
Yes.
But, like, anyway, yeah. My whole point being is that lean on your circle and whatever, but out front, just don't address those issues. Yeah. That's probably been something people have noticed. Like, I don't just address issues. I address them to people's faces, behind the scenes, off of the air, whatever. I'm not doing it here. Like, that's just stupid to me.
Yes. Yes. You know where we do address things, everybody? Patreon. Patreon.com/tappedoutpod. We have only scratched the surface of what we have to say and what we have to talk about. But I think we do want to, as we wrap up here, it was a good event. It was good to see It was good to experience. Uh, it's a good thing. That event is much better than when they would just announce them on tipping point and the people would call in.
Correct.
That was such a crapshoot. Um, but and to everybody who did hard work, Rod, who's trying to get all these spreadsheets and nominations together. It takes a lot of work. Putting on an event is a lot of work. To the wrestlers who put their bodies on the line week in and week out, the promoters who put their money on the line. It it was a good time to celebrate that. And I hope everyone in Georgia wrestling, you take the joy of that night,
Mm-hmm.
and that fuels you. You take disappointment or heat, whatever it is, and that fuels you as well to just get better this year. And I do think we're starting to see a rising tide in Georgia wrestling, and that's good for everybody.
Look, Carly Bravo said it best that night, man. Like, hey, look, and these young kids, like, this was great for them. A lot of those kids that were winning, the young promotions that were winning, all of that stuff, like you said, man. Hey, it's good for everybody. And we did a thing a while back where I think it was a Patreon I did, where I was like, I look at things as a three-headed monster. There's Georgia wrestling history, there's the awards, and there's a gala. There's three separate entities. They run, and that's just a weird thing that I have its logic. I explained it all on a Patreon. If you're a Patreon member, you would have heard my justification to that statement.
Yes.
So, like you said, kudos to the Georgia Wrestling History Awards, the process,
Yes.
the energies. All those people that were involved know we're not gonna sit here and call them all out. Don't whatever. But hey, kudos to them for putting in like the committee and the voting and all of that stuff. Kudos to all the people. Look, it was spearheaded by Narcissism. Great. The event was good. It was like set up very well. So forth. Look, here's our thing. It should all be respected, appreciated, and enjoyed. Absolutely. Somebody comes up and says, hey, but there's not anything. By the way, this podcast is one of them where I always say, constantly, how often am I telling you, like, we need to do this better? We need to fix this. This needs to be changed. That's probably, I bet you didn't think in 1 year you would hear me say that many times. Like Myron makes a joke about it. Like Nick is always trying to like do something different. Always.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's a me problem. I get it. But the reason I say that is I'm turning it back to the gala where I was like, look, even though we can sit there and appreciate it, enjoy it, and respect it, absolutely deserves all three.
Yeah.
Could we do things better?
Yes.
And not we. Could things be improved? Absolutely. If you're not getting better, you're getting worse, and you're going backwards. That's always my take on everything. So now, why do I even say that? We're not going to say, those things here. Those will be on patreon.com/tappedoutpod. We'll give you the things that we would say. And by the way, I do want to say this on the air. Nothing that will be on that Patreon has not been said to the people that matter, in that process of all of the above.
Right.
So, like I said, look, I've had those conversations, so it's not like I'm blindsiding them. They're not going to hear it for the first time and be shocked. So patreon.com, if you want to hear it for the first time, patreon.com/tappedoutpod. That's where we will do that. And that should be any day here right after this episode.
Yes. Fans, we are so grateful for your support of the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast Network. And if you've enjoyed the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Show, you will love the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight, where we talk about the shows that just passed and the shows coming up. And speaking of shows, maybe, just maybe, fans, as we travel the highways and the byways, we'll see you at the matches.